It's funny, isn't it, how we often fixate on those picture-perfect success stories? The straight-A student, the prodigy, the overnight sensation.
Right, the ones that seem to effortlessly glide through life, achieving milestone after milestone.
But, I find myself increasingly drawn to the stories of those who stumbled, who faced rejection, who had to carve their own path.
Those are the stories that resonate, right?
Yeah.
Because they feel more relatable, more human. They remind us that setbacks are a part of the journey, not a sign of failure.
Absolutely. And there's probably no better example of that than the story of Jack Ma, the co-founder of Alibaba. I mean, here's a guy who reportedly faced something like 30 job rejections. 30. Even KFC turned him down.
Wow. I mean, KFC, that's incredible.
And it's not just that. He failed his college entrance exam, not once, but twice. And get this. On his first attempt, he scored a 1 out of 120 in math. A 1. It's hard to fathom how someone with that kind of start goes on to build one of the world's most influential companies.
It really throws into question those traditional metrics of success, doesn't it? Grades, test scores, early achievements. His story suggests that resilience, adaptability, and a different set of skills can be far more significant in the long run.
Totally. And that's what we're really diving into today. We're going beyond the typical biography. This is a deep dive into the world of Jack Ma, into how he works. We're unpacking his journey, the decisions he made, the challenges he overcame, and what we can learn from his experiences. Because I think there are valuable insights here for anyone, whether you're an entrepreneur, a student, or just someone facing your own set of hurdles.
So we're not just interested in what he accomplished, but how he did it. How did he navigate those early setbacks? How did he build a global empire? How did he adapt to changing circumstances and intense scrutiny? Those are the questions we'll explore.
Exactly. So let's start at the beginning. Ma Yun, that was his birth name, was born in Hangzhou, China in 1964. And it seems like, from a young age, he was fascinated by the English language.
It's fascinating how driven he was in that pursuit. We hear these stories of him as a young boy practicing English with tourists at the Hangzhou International Hotel. He even became a tour guide at 12 years old, cycling 17 miles every day just to have those opportunities to practice. That level of initiative and self-motivation at that age is remarkable.
And the nickname Jack comes from this period too, right? An English-speaking pen pal gave it to him.
Right, an early connection to the global stage.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, especially academically. In his younger years, he really struggled, particularly with math. Failing that high school entrance exam with a score of 31 points is a pretty stark indicator of those difficulties.
It shows that success doesn't always follow a conventional path.
Exactly. It really challenges the notion that we should judge potential solely on performance in traditional subjects. His strengths clearly lay elsewhere. And what's interesting is that despite those challenges, his determination to learn English never wavered.
And then there's this pivotal experience in 1980 when he met Ken Morley and his family from Australia. That 29-day stay in Australia seems to have had a profound impact on him.
Imagine that, at 16 years old, being exposed to a completely different culture and way of life. He's described it as a life-changing experience that broadened his horizons and exposed him to new ideas and possibilities.
It makes you wonder, what kind of conversations did they have? What did he observe? What seeds were planted during those 29 days?
We can only speculate, but it likely played a significant role in shaping his worldview and his ambitions. It highlights the power of cross-cultural experiences and the importance of stepping outside your comfort zone.
So fast forward a few years, and he's facing the Gaokao, the notoriously challenging Chinese college entrance exam. And he takes it not once, but twice, and fails both times. His first math score was, incredibly, just 1 point.
It's almost hard to believe. It's a testament to how much weight is placed on that single exam in the Chinese education system.
He managed to improve to 19 points on his second attempt, but it still wasn't enough. And even after those academic setbacks, he faces rejection in the job market. We hear stories about him being turned down as a waiter, apparently due to his appearance.
You have to admire his persistence. Despite facing obstacle after obstacle, he didn't give up.
So how did he finally break through? What was the turning point?
It seems like those rejections, in a way, fueled his determination. When traditional paths are blocked, sometimes you have to forge your own. And that's precisely what he did. In 1994, he started his first business, the Hangzhou Hope Translation Agency, focusing on online Chinese translation.
That was a savvy move, recognizing the growing need for language services in a rapidly globalizing world.
Exactly. And it coincided with his first exposure to the internet in 1995 during a trip to the U.S. That was a pivotal moment. He saw the potential of the internet, but he also noticed a glaring absence of Chinese content online.
That sparked the idea for China Pages, an online directory for Chinese businesses, essentially an online Yellow Pages.
He saw a gap in the market and jumped on it. Even though his first attempt at building a website for a Chinese beer company was very basic, it immediately attracted investor interest. That early validation must have been incredibly encouraging, showing him the tangible possibilities of the internet in China.
And China Pages actually became profitable pretty quickly. He was building websites for Chinese companies, working with friends in the US, despite the painfully slow internet speeds of the time. It speaks to his commitment to making this new technology work in the Chinese context.
It highlights his early understanding of the internet's transformative power to connect businesses across geographical boundaries. And then he gained valuable experience working within the existing system, leading an IT company under the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Economic Cooperation from 1998 to 1999. But the pivotal moment came in 1999 when he decided to leave that secure position and launch Alibaba.
It was a bold move, wasn't it? Leaving a government-backed job to start something completely new.
It took a huge leap of faith. He gathered 18 friends in his apartment and convinced them to join him on this journey.
And they managed to secure $25 million in venture capital pretty quickly from big names like Goldman Sachs and SoftBank.
That's a testament to his powers of persuasion and his ability to articulate a compelling vision. They believed in him, and they believed in the potential of Alibaba, this B2B e-commerce platform that was designed to help small and medium-sized businesses thrive in the digital age.
And his focus on small and medium-sized enterprises was strategic, wasn't it? Especially with China's impending entry into the World Trade Organization.
Absolutely. He understood that these businesses would be key drivers of China's economic growth as the country opened up to global trade. And Alibaba achieved profitability within just 3 years, which is remarkable.
And then came the launches of Taobao, Alipay, Alimama, Lynx, these platforms that created a complete e-commerce ecosystem.
He was building a digital infrastructure that would change the face of commerce in China and beyond. And then there's that crucial moment when eBay, the global e-commerce giant at the time, offered to acquire Alibaba.
That could have been an easy exit, a huge payday.
It would have been for most people. But Jack Ma turned them down. Instead, he secured a significant investment from Yahoo's co-founder, Jerry Yang. That decision reveals a lot about his long-term vision. He wasn't just building a company to sell, he was building an empire.
So he becomes the executive chairman of this massive Alibaba empire. What was his leadership style like, especially considering his lack of deep technical expertise?
His leadership wasn't about being the tech whiz. It was about being the visionary, the strategist, the motivator. He excelled at articulating a clear vision and inspiring others to believe in it. He built a strong team of people with the technical expertise he lacked and empowered them to execute his ideas. He was the orchestra conductor, bringing together the right musicians to create a symphony.
And he was very open about his lack of technical skills. He famously said he never wrote a single line of code or made a direct sale, and he didn't even get his first personal computer until he was 33.
It's a reminder that great leaders don't need to be experts in every aspect of their business. They need to be able to identify talent, delegate effectively, and foster a culture of innovation.
But there were some bumps along the way, right? That controversy surrounding the transfer of Alipay's ownership in 2011, which led to a dispute with investors like Yahoo and SoftBank.
That situation highlighted the complexities of operating a business in China's unique environment, where the lines between private enterprise and state interests can sometimes be blurry. It required careful navigation and negotiation.
But despite that controversy, Alibaba's growth continued, exceeding 1 trillion yuan in online transaction volume in 2012. He stepped down as CEO in 2013, but remained as executive chairman, shifting his focus towards broader strategic goals.
It was a natural evolution for him, moving from day-to-day operations to long-term vision and direction.
And then came that monumental IPO on the New York Stock Exchange in 2014. It was a defining moment, catapulting Alibaba onto the global stage and cementing Jack Ma's status as a business icon.
And we start to see him exploring other interests around this time, acquiring vineyards in Bordeaux, performing at company events, even meeting with Donald Trump to discuss job creation in the U.S.
He became this global figure, this charismatic personality who wasn't afraid to step outside the conventional mold of a CEO. Those performances at Alibaba events were something else, the Michael Jackson tribute, the heavy metal singing. It was so unexpected.
It showed a different side to him, a willingness to be playful, to have fun, to connect with his employees in a more personal way.
And then in 2018, he announced he would be stepping down as executive chairman to focus on philanthropy. He was only 54 at the time.
It was a surprising move for many, but it seemed to be driven by a genuine desire to give back and make a difference in areas like education and environmental sustainability.
He explicitly denied being forced out by the Chinese government, and Daniel Zhang took over as executive chairman. Ma eventually stepped down from Alibaba's board completely in 2020. But then things took a dramatic turn, didn't they? This period of increased regulatory scrutiny that began shortly after.
It was a major shift in the landscape. His public appearances became less frequent, coinciding with this broader crackdown on the tech industry in China.
And it seems like his outspoken criticism of China's financial regulators might have played a role. Calling state banks a pawn shop and the Basel Accords a club for the elderly was pretty bold.
It was a surprisingly direct critique from someone of his stature. And it seems to have had consequences.
Yeah.
The highly anticipated IPO of Ant Group, his fintech giant, was abruptly halted in November 2020.
That was a huge deal. It sent shockwaves through the global financial markets.
The core issue was the regulatory classification of Ant Group. Was it a tech company or a financial institution? Regulators were concerned about the potential systemic risks posed by these large fintech platforms and were pushing for stricter oversight.
So he made a brief reappearance in January 2021, virtually addressing rural teachers, but then reports emerged of him living a low-profile life in Tokyo, Japan, even taking on a role as an invited professor at Tokyo College, focusing on sustainable agriculture.
It seemed like a deliberate step back from the spotlight, a period of reflection and perhaps a strategic retreat.
And during this time, Alibaba underwent a massive restructuring, splitting into 6 independent business units. There were suggestions that Ma himself orchestrated this move, even from afar.
It was a significant change, and it's open to interpretation. Was it a way to appease regulators by breaking up the perceived monopoly? Was it a strategic move to unlock value? Or was it a way for Ma to subtly maintain his influence?
And then in early 2023, major changes were made to Ant Group's ownership structure, significantly reducing Ma's voting rights. It seems like a concession to address those regulatory concerns.
It was a necessary step to pave the way for Ant Group to potentially move forward under a revised framework. And the Chinese government's positive response signaled a potential thawing of relations.
And despite those changes, he reportedly became Alibaba's largest shareholder again in early 2024, surpassing SoftBank.
It's a complex dance, this interplay between private enterprise and state influence in China. And then there's that symbolic moment in February 2025, his reappearance at a symposium hosted by President Xi Jinping. His first major public appearance in years.
It's being interpreted as a sign of his public rehabilitation, a suggestion that perhaps the worst is over?
It's a development worth watching closely. But let's not forget his other ventures. His acting debut in the 2017 Kung Fu short film Gong Shou Dao was quite memorable.
That was a fun surprise. It showed his playful side, his willingness to embrace the unexpected.
And his philanthropic work through the Jackma Foundation is significant. They've made substantial contributions in areas like education, environmental sustainability, and public health.
It shows his commitment to using his wealth and influence to address societal challenges. The establishment of the Hupen School, a business school focused on fostering entrepreneurship, is a prime example.
He's been recognized for his philanthropic efforts, named a Hero of Philanthropy by Forbes, and receiving the Confucius Education Award in 2023.
And let's not forget his response to the COVID-19 pandemic, providing crucial medical supplies globally. But he's also known for some controversial viewpoints.
Right, like his support for the 996 work culture, the 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week schedule.
It sparked a debate about work-life balance and the pressures of the modern workplace.
He defended it as a necessary sacrifice for success, while also predicting that AI would eventually lead to shorter workdays.
It's an interesting juxtaposition, his belief in hard work and his optimism about technology's potential to improve our lives.
And he's spoken about his belief in the importance of a strong value system for China, even referencing Judeo-Christian ethics. He's a complex figure, full of contradictions.
So here we have this incredibly multifaceted individual. He's faced immense challenges, achieved extraordinary success, navigated complex political landscapes, and dedicated himself to philanthropy. It's a story that continues to unfold, and it's one that offers valuable lessons for all of us.
Absolutely. So for you, the listener, I want you to think about this. What resonates with you most about Jack Ma's story? How does his resilience in the face of rejection, his ability to spot opportunities, and his evolving sense of purpose inspire you in your own life? What can you take away from his journey that might help you navigate your own challenges and achieve your own version of success?
And here's one final thought to ponder. Given his recent reappearance and the ever-changing dynamics in China, what do you think the next chapter holds for Jack Ma? What new ventures will he pursue? What impact will he have on the world stage? It's a story that's far from over.